town of the good, the bad, and the weird. You either live by the gun, or you die by the sword.
Welcome to The Good, the Bad, and the Weird. I'm Nico.
And I'm Chris.
And it is, once again, the most magical time of the year. And no, I'm not talking about Christmas. I'm talking about the 5-year honored tradition of Nic Cage November.
Once again, we are upon that time of year where our hearts and eyes are filled with nothing but Nic Cage.
Yes. And this year, since we've already done 2 movies around this subject, we decided to do probably one of the most memed movies of all time.
It really is, and also nicely rounds out our last topic.
Yes. We decided to do the 2006 remake of the 1973 film, The Wicker Man.
Starring none other than Nic Cage.
Yes.
And bees.
Yes. One of my favorite phrases that I don't scream enough anymore.
I believe at one point it was your goal to be Nic Cage from this movie for Halloween.
It still kind of is. I just haven't had time the past couple of years or haven't made time to do.
Understandable.
Costume, per se.
It is also, unlike, say, him stealing the Declaration of Independence, a more challenging costume. Because he is dressed as just a man.
Yes. Very much so. So, for those unfamiliar with The Wicker Man, once again, it is the remake of the 1973 movie, and it's about a police officer who travels on his own accord to a mysterious West Coast commune to investigate a missing girl after an old fling tells him, or sends him a letter asking for help.
And, in theory, this movie sounds like a good time. We have seen and talked about how much we enjoyed the original, and we've talked about how the one that came after it was lacking in a great many things.
Mm-hmm.
And so, it is a retelling in that, it's all placed in a new place, it is updated a little bit. Granted, it didn't have a whole lot of updating to do, but, we did try and bring some new life to the story. So, in theory, this should have been at least an okay movie. And yet, somehow, but I shouldn't even say somehow, the plot of this movie is so purposefully misleading. And not in the, fun, murder mystery sort of way where you're, at least learning about characters. Or learning about some background people.
Yeah.
Or plot that doesn't really have anything. No. This movie is just Nic Cage being the worst detective known to man. He doesn't ask any questions. He barely goes and investigates. He just shows up and is like, "Tell me!"
To be fair, he's not a detective.
He's not, but he has been sent to this island.
He hasn't been sent. He's gone on his own accord.
Yeah. Okay, I feel like even a normal standard, because he is a policeman in this movie.
Yeah, he's a highway patrolman.
A state trooper, maybe. We're not really sure.
Yeah.
But still, I feel like a average intelligence adult who is trying to solve a murder mystery, or just a disappearance mystery, is at least capable of asking the question, "Could you expand on that, please?"
No.
And he doesn't.
Never.
Not once in this movie. It's the end of the movie when he finally goes door to door to ask people what the hell's going on.
Not even then.
And by then there's no one home. This movie is so convoluted, but it's kind of fun that way.
Yes. So, The Wicker Man is written and directed by Neil LaBute, with writing credit given to Anthony Schaefer for the original 1973 screenplay.
Please note that when this movie came out on DVD, Anthony requested that his name be removed from the movie posters because he didn't feel that he had, quote unquote, did not feel that he had earned the credit for it, as he was not part of the writing for this movie. He just worked on the original. And also his lawyer was the one who sent that request. So,
yeah,
there's that.
I don't blame him. It stars Nicolas Cage, obviously.
Of course.
Alan Bertrand.
Yeah.
And Kate Behan.
Mm-hmm.
And our sources for this episode include the commentary by director Neil LaBute.
Yeah.
Actors Lily Sobieski, Bate Behan, editor Joe Plotch, and costume designer Lynette Meyer.
And also a handful of interviews that I could find from both Christopher Lee and Cage on the creating and how they felt about this. One of which was a not real an interview, but a live question and answer that he did for Ghost Rider, for the promo for that, where one of his fans does prompt him to talk in length about this, and it just really gives you some insight into Cage's brain.
Yes. And there's not really a whole lot of backstory on why this was remade, other than Nicolas Cage's production company, Saturn Pictures, or Saturn Films, wanted to do it, and they approached LaBute to do the remake. And that's really all any of them go into the process of why they even wanted to remake this movie, other than I think probably Nic Cage just loved this movie to begin with, so...
That seems to be kind of what I can find as well. The only other, tidbit I could find was after the success of the first one, as we talked about with the original, it had been long talked about of expanding the world, of continuing on the story, and from what I can tell, it was something that had always been on the table, but no one in their right mind had been willing to, do it.
Yeah.
And then Nic Cage's company came along and was like, yeah, we'll give it a stab.
Yeah, and it might be worth noting that, and a reminder from our original Wicker Man episode, that the original Wicker Man didn't do well in the UK, but it did well in the US as an art house film.
This movie, however, did not do good anywhere.
No.
This movie was received terribly by critics, even to this day, only having a very low score on just about every website. The internet has loved it because of its memeability, but that seems to really be the only one. There's not even a cult following for this. We're talking about it because we love Nic Cage, and that's literally the only reason.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, this movie lost money in both box office and DVD sales. So there's at no point, by no metric was this successful. And on top of that, the number of Razzie Awards of various types that this movie either won or was nominated for is staggering.
Yeah. And my personal history with the movie is I actually found out about this movie probably, I want to say, around 2007, 2008 from some of the other guys I was going to Boy Scouts with.
This is a very Boy Scout-esque movie.
Well, I never saw it. They just brought it up.
Of course.
I mean, I was living in Italy, so we didn't have a lot of access to more recent films.
Understandable.
So that's how I found out about this one, and I was super into horror films, and so that's where I started with Nic Cage, because before I started liking him, and when I hated him, I only had this movie and The Family Man. I think those were my only two Nic Cage movies that I had.
Understandable, really. Understandable. I think, for me, I watched this movie, unfortunately, well before I watched the original. This was my introduction to The Wicker Man, and to an extent, this entire genre of folk-styled horror, despite having, seen a handful of other ones, it wasn't a genre as a whole when I was starting my exploration. But Wicker Man, I liked the style of, so that's kind of, I followed up from there.
Yeah.
However, I will say that this was one of the ones that I picked it because of Nicolas Cage, because I was familiar with Ghost Rider Nicolas Cage and National Treasure Nic Cage, which I think is how most of us knew Nic Cage at the time.
Yeah, I would say Ghost Rider, and I didn't see National Treasure until way, way later, so.
I think my enjoyment of the crazy from that led into Wicker Man, which then led into the absolute batshitness of his acting career, and it has taken until recent years for me to find his better works.
Yes. So, before we dive into it, Chris, what are we drinking today?
We have found a mead, which feels appropriate for a movie based fully around honey.
Voodoo ginger mead on top of that.
That's very fancy.
Cheers.
Cheers. Ooh, a delight.
Refreshing.
Very bright.
So, The Wicker Man.
Oh boy, here we go.
We open on a small town diner, which I do appreciate that from the beginning. They really try to hit the cheesy small town Americana vibes to really set our protagonist, Edward, apart from our previous counterpart. I also like that they're trying to weave in a little bit that he's maybe not doing mentally, looking for self-help.
Yeah, I do love how very quickly this movie dated itself by the cassette tape helps set, This isn't just like he has a book on self-help. This isn't like he has like a journal that he's trying to work through. He has just the tapes and his meds, which, whatever works for you, works for you. I just question how well this is working for Nic Cage's character.
Yes. Which LaBute wanted to make a more contemporary American setting, which is something we'll get into as the movie goes on, because doesn't exactly work the way I think he wanted it to.
No, this setting is essentially just the same backdrop as every other setting set in fill-in slightly coastal rural area here.
Mm-hmm.
Twilight comes to mind. I'm aware, everyone, that Twilight is set in a specific place, but if no one told you that, you would just be filled with the mysterious something. The mysterious place where it's always a little cloudy and always a little rainy. And then sometimes it's sunny, but only when it's convenient for plot.
The coast, because otherwise it'd be windy as hell.
And also we need some island, and also some shots of cliffs.
Yeah.
Like, it's very generic. Like, it's not New York, it's not the Midwest, it's the coast.
Yeah. Well, we haven't even gotten to the coast yet. We're still Americana.
It is Americana, but it is distinctly that, like, evergreen tree-esque Americana.
Yeah.
You know what I
Northern
mean?
California-ish.
Yeah.
Yeah, but small little trivia as well. Edward's last name is Woodward, as a nod to the original actor, Edward Woodward.
A delight. I enjoy the fact that from the get-go, I immediately forget this man's name and just replace it with Nic Cage for the rest of the movie.
No, because you don't ever, like, really hear his name, like, other than, like, the first 10, 20 minutes of the movie.
And even then, like, most of the characters will very briefly say his name, if they say it at all. Most of them just, like, talk to him with no introduction, so you really have to be paying attention.
Yeah, which, immediately after, like, the whole little diner scene with some relatively forgettable dialogue.
It's very forgettable.
He's already back on patrol, and I don't know what they're trying to do with, like, him going over the Call of Duty and picking up the doll, and, like, the busy highway is a dumb way to try and foreshadow that, like, maybe it's not so safe stopping on this side of the road.
Also, this highway does not seem to be busy up until the truck is crashing into him, which is very entertaining.
There's a couple that pass by.
Yeah. The other thing that I love is that the intro words to this, because there is, like, font of, starring, presented by, all of that is just in papyrus font. Which really makes me take this movie very seriously.
Totally. But one thing about the scene, too, is he doesn't look before crossing the highway.
He sure doesn't, does he?
And I do wonder, did the truck swerve to avoid him and hit the family instead?
That would be terrible, but also very on point for the rest of this movie.
Yeah, might add, there's a stupid part where it's mother and daughter in the car. He's trying to be very charming and friendly, but like, also their role is so
useless.
Yeah, useless.
Yeah, it's very, because,
well, it also makes the movie more confusing with some of the stuff that happens later.
Yes, and this is where we begin down one path that this movie tries to take.
Yes.
Which is Nic Cage's possible unhingedness in the head. Because from this part, we set up pretty clearly what happens here. It's not very, like, obscure as to, like, what's happening in the car, why is, like, what happened, where the truck came from is a little bit weird, but also he's on the highway.
Yeah, he's standing in the middle of the highway, too.
Like, where's the truck supposed to go? In the field? Like...
Over the cliff, or over the large hill that they're next to with the guardrails?
Yeah, like, this is a bit like saying you're surprised by the train. You're not. The train is on the train tracks. It's the whole,
do I hit the one person, or do I pull the lever and hit all the other people?
Yeah, that's pretty much what happened to this poor truck driver. But the way that this is filmed, unlike other movies that do a good job of, like, playing with the movie's understanding of sanity, this movie does not set up this to be questionable in any way. There's no hints that maybe something's off here. This is shot very standardly.
Yeah, in 3 minutes we go from, okay, he's a normal American highway cop to, motorcycle highway cop, might I add, to, boom.
Death.
Explosions, death, and a really cheesy explosion too, might we add.
It is. The fire is also, it just feels extra for no reason.
Yeah.
Like, I'm aware that cars burn on the highway. That's not my complaint. My complaint is it happens in such a way that theatrical for Cage's character to go, the flames!
Yes.
Let me save this family, no! And then it explodes, and he's like, oh no! Like, it's so...
And where does the truck go?
The truck's just hanging out. And I do appreciate that in theory, in reality, like, if all of this was real, that poor truck driver cannot have just, like, walked away from this unharmed either, like... But we do not care about him or the rest of the people on the highway.
The truck driver's never even brought up. It's always about the mother and daughter after this.
Yes, this movie has a very strange, narrow lens.
Yeah. No, it's just really dumb.
It is very dumb. Even from the beginning, you watch that scene and you're like, wow, okay.
Alright, this is where we're going.
Okay.
Because immediately from here we go right into the title cards and flash forward to Edward not doing so well.
Again, all in papyrus font.
We also, it's unsolved mystery of nothing characters that he's going to be continued to haunted by. Like, it's supposed to be like some shitty parallel for Edward and his plight. But also, like, they're just like, well, we don't even know who they were. The plates didn't come up with anything. They're ghosts.
Feels like you didn't try very hard.
No.
They're Bob at the police station.
No.
The other thing that really irks me is if we had waited until later in the film to reveal that maybe there was no one in the car.
Mm-hmm.
Or bring out this idea that they were ghosts the whole time, I could have maybe, like, seen where we were trying to go with questioning Edward's sanity. But they, like, this scene happens, we cut to him having some, like, hard time sleeping at home, then to him being debriefed on this, and all of that happens so fast that you're just like, oh, okay, well, I guess that's fine?
Yeah.
Like, there's no time for you to question or even to solidify what happened in your mind.
No.
Like, the movie is just like, we told you this, now we're telling you this. Go, go, go.
Yeah, no, exactly. And one of his cop friends shows up to drop off letters and...
Okay. How do you feel about the letter's handwriting? Because I have some questions.
I did not pay attention.
I did, because I wanted to know if... One of my fun things is to try to see if the prop person was paying attention to put the correct letter to what is being narrated. Because Nic Cage's character practically reads the letter out loud to himself. And, like, for the most part, as far as I could tell, the words and what he reads are close enough. However, she wrote it with Victorian handwriting and what appears to be a fountain pen in perfect lettering.
You know?
On, like, parchment paper.
We don't know her profession. She could be the town scribe, so her lettering has to be perfect.
That is the only way that this makes sense. I do kind of wish that there had been more emphasis on this letter, because clearly the prop person went into a lot of effort to be like, look, the letter is coming from someone weird.
Mm-hmm.
But the camera doesn't even, like, focus on the letter. It's, like, not even a second's worth of clip. I had to, like, fast forward and rewind a whole bunch to, like, find where I could look at this letter. And, like, but it would have been so cool if he had, like, had to cut open a wax seal with a bee on it and been like, wow, what a weird-ass piece of paper.
Really build it up instead of, like...
Because clearly the prop person made this.
Yeah.
Like, it was at some point someone discussed this. And then instead it's, like, barely in frame as Cage reads it out loud.
Yeah. It's just a dumb little bit.
Like, there's no details in this movie.
No, not at all. It's just, God, I was watching the writer, Matt and Trey from South Park explain their writing process.
Yeah.
And their movie, and the way they explain of, like, you know you don't have something good when it's and then, instead of, well, because of this happened, but because of that, the XYZ, and it's a really bad explanation of how they do it,
But yeah, though, this is very much an and then movie, because we have already been presented with now two separate plot points from the beginning, both of which are never going to be fully flushed out. One, Nic Cage's character's mental sanity, which has already been brought into question, and we're barely into this movie. But also maybe not. And then Mystery Woman, who we've given no details about, which is supposed to be the main plot of the movie.
Well, not at all. Well, and that exactly, because with just some random letter that he receives, as far as we're aware.
Yeah.
We also learned that she's now residing on Summers Isle in Puget Sound with her daughter.
You know, why not? I don't care. None of these people mean anything yet.
Well, and, like, I get wanting to make it American, but at least make it sound a little bit different than the original.
Yes.
Like
it sounds
New Summer's Isle. Even that would have been more
funny,
better.
Though.
Yeah,
that would have been hilarious. New Summer's Isle.
Exactly. Like New Jersey, New York, New Summer's Isle.
Yes. The other thing that I do wish this movie had the balls to do was this movie presented itself as a retelling. So not just like we're modernizing it a little bit. They really thought they were doing something here.
Oh, yeah.
They really thought that they were reimagining this movie. And instead of like really going ham with the details, which is why the first one was so good, was all of the details not just like told to us via storytelling, but like sprinkled in through visual help. Well, this movie just kind of is like, bleh.
Yeah, and the original was based off old folklore, or like old witch trials and stuff, and old pagan, or old beliefs on how paganism was. And I'll get into where this one goes. And
yeah. We most certainly will, because boy, they didn't do any research, did they?
They didn't even try.
No, they really didn't.
But, now he's doing a little bit of digging and goes to the police officer, or the police headquarters, to just kind of ask for advice and be like, hey, what should I do?
I appreciate that you call this digging, because this isn't digging.
No.
This is essentially going to his only friend and being like, hey, I got this weird letter.
No. He did a printout. He goes on.
He did.
He goes on the interwebs. Remember, this is 2006.
It is 2006. I do have a bit of a complaint here, though.
Okay.
This movie does not give a hard and fast time and when the technology is set. Someone in the prop department was told when to put this, because the tape player, the headphones, the printing out does say a certain time, but because we are moving very quickly into fake cult on fake island in Washington, it makes it very hard. And also, police uniforms have not changed enough for the general audience to be able to like interpret when this was. Because he's not wearing like the handlebar mustache that would like make him super obvious, like, oh, this is a 70s or 80s comic.
Yeah.
It's Nic Cage. It's just normal looking Nic Cage.
It makes it feel like it's maybe mid-early 90s.
At times. And then at other times, because the technology is the only thing giving us a date, you forget when this is placed, and you get frustrated as the audience for his lack of knowledge.
Because he does have a cell phone, and the cell phone's a little bit too small for
and like
that era.
And like it's all stuff that like if they gave a hard date and like really expanded and played into it, again with details in clothing and character design, even in like transportation and models of vehicles that they're showing, I think it could have worked, because like those things can overlap just fine. But we aren't given any character information on why this man is so bad with technology or asking questions in general. Like we're given no explanation of what's happening, why this person is who he goes to.
One, he's also not a detective, and maybe the person he's going to is a detective.
Again, though, like, why this man? Like, is this his best friend? Is it a partner in the police force? Is this the only guy he knows? As far as we know, he doesn't hang out with real people.
It's one of the only, like, actually...
Because how cool would that have been if this was, like, his only friend that he goes to, and it's just his work buddy?
Well, what's interesting is this is one of two men he has a conversation with this entire movie.
That's true, and it is something that I wish because this is a theme the movie wants to play into.
Yeah, it really wants to play into like the whole feminist matriarchy idea.
Which is a cool concept, especially for like a cult movie, but it doesn't lean in very hard.
No, not at all. But we do also learn that this chick that he's got a letter from is his old fiance that left him at the altar, which kind of funny reversal of roles.
So freaking cheesy.
Oh yeah, no, but it's like, why are you?
He doesn't have any pictures of her, doesn't recognize like the handwriting. Isn't like, wow, when I was dating her, she wasn't into handcrafted calligraphy.
He knows who it is from the signature and everything. I'm sure he's seen the writing.
Yeah, but like it doesn't seem to bother him.
But like, I do have to say, like, why are you so ready to do this for a person who left you behind? Maybe because it's not like he's even like.
There's no character development for this man.
Yeah, no, it's not even framed like he's looking for answers of why did you leave me. He's just like, well, she needs help, and I gotta go help her, I guess.
Yeah, because like again, small details of his house could have been really cool. Of like, oh, he's still in love with her, or oh, he's always dreamed of having a family. Like all of that could have really played into this and made this movie actually good.
I will say one thing I like about this scene, and it feels nostalgic, is ye old printouts.
I do. Okay, if this had been set in like early 90s, I think this theme could have worked, but you're not hard on it.
Or if it's even set in the early 2000s, I'd say.
Yeah, like right at the O's. Like right after the whole like panic of technology.
Maybe that's it.
That could have been cool, but we don't play into anything.
But we also don't need it because like the technology doesn't do anything even in this beginning part of the movie.
No, I agree. The technology doesn't. However, if he had been more like time appropriately dressed, that could have helped set him off versus the islandists who are supposed to be like these like hermit-like people who like make their own clothes and worship the bees.
Even set in the 70s where he doesn't have access to technology.
Which could have then helped play up the police persona.
Yeah.
Like, we could have put a handlebar mustache on the man and made him wear sunglasses everywhere.
Yes.
Which would have been a little cheesy nowadays, but would have at least given me something to work with. This man is a wet tissue paper.
Yeah, no, exactly. A little bit of trivia in the cop's office, if you pay close attention in the background. Edward Woodward is actually on one of the missing posters in the background, which
he's already missing.
I do think it's a nice little Easter egg, like little nod
too.
to the original that he's missing. So
I do also think it's like there is some Easter eggs to be had. They're just either so poorly placed that the average human can't find them, and you have to like scroll your way through to get.
And it's a one-off that like doesn't really do much.
And again, you immediately forget what this man's name is.
It's Edward.
I know, but I have forgotten already, and we're 5 minutes in.
Yeah.
Like, every time, and I've seen this movie many times, and every time I'm like, oh yeah, the guy's named Edward.
You just don't recognize him because he doesn't have the metal arm, the yellow hair, and some amalgamation of man and child, or monster, or dog and child saying, Edward.
That would have helped. But also, it would have helped if it didn't look straight up like Nic Cage does on a, like, Wednesday afternoon. And also, if the character's actually, like, been like, Edward, good to see you, man.
Yeah.
Or even, like, given him nicknames. Be like, Ed, Eddie, how you doing, man? Like, no. They're all just like, sir, how are you?
Actually, we'll have two Nic Cage movies this year that have the name Ed in it.
That's true. It's a popular name for Cage characters.
Yeah. Yeah. But now we're on to Summer's Isle, which I don't get why, like, we've gone from him being a highway cop to now fancying himself as some kind of detective. Like,
I could have seen it again if we'd had a little bit of background into like he's been pursuing the detective role, or you know he's really big for his britches sort of mindset, or like he's been told off the case and he feels like he no one has told him off the case. No one has even mentioned that like you're not a detective. They're just like, I mean, it's your ex-fiance.
Yeah, just like, it's up to you whether you want to go do this or not.
You got a long weekend because we told you to take some rest after watching that horrific fire.
You're a California cop, so why don't you go pretend to be a detective in Washington?
That is a good point, too.
Yeah.
Like, Washington is such a generic fucking place to set this. Why couldn't have we gone somewhere else?
Because it's... I think I can explain this.
Okay.
They don't really say it in this movie, so this is just my speculation.
Okay.
Because I think that's as far... Washington feels as far west and away from the rest of the United States as you can without going to Alaska or Hawaii.
I would have almost preferred this if this was a cheesy Alaska.
But, so...
Like, get real fucking remote with it.
No, I don't see this...
Or go to Colorado.
Having lived in Alaska, this would not have worked in Alaska. Alaska is... People forget how dangerous of a place it is to live, like, away from everything else.
Yeah, I don't know. For me, it feels like... They say, we're going to this island in Washington, but it feels like such a generic, fucking boring place.
Yeah.
That, like, I feel like we could have done literally anything else to bring it more modern. I know the idea is like, oh, well, we're trying to, like, reimagine the original. But you already did ya? So, like, why not keep going? Why not put it in the, like, cult capital of America, which is Texas or Colorado? Both of which have good settings.
North and South Dakota does start feeling a little more desolate.
They also
less trees, it doesn't feel as pretty.
It is not as pretty.
You know, that's why they chose Washington, because depending on where you're at in Colorado, it's pretty barren.
Yeah, I also question the, like, choice to have this be, like, their entire thing is bees, and we're on an island in the northern part of Washington.
We'll get to that in a minute.
Okay.
Well, I'll get into why the bees are in there.
I would love to know.
Yeah, so I also, at this part, they're trying real hard once again to make it feel like he's losing it. He sees some random girl on the boat, and he has a flashback to the car wreck again.
Yeah, which, again, this is a different plot point. A different plot entirely for this movie, which I could have gotten behind if we had actually, like, explored his psyche problems to begin with.
Yeah, they're just not there. It's a dumb attempted at this paralleling motif between mother and daughter. That's the reason why he's trying to save.
And I don't
this
even feel like they used
kid.
it. I don't even think they used it in the same, like, even Mad Max has this sort of, like, bullshit, but they at least play into the fact that, like, everyone's a little crazy out here in the Wild West of nowhereness.
Yeah.
And, like,
I mean, it is Australia, so
set in, you know, the apocalypse.
Yeah.
And, like, I don't know, like, even that one, when it's not explained, like, at least there's, like, one fan in the audience who can whisper, like, that's his dead daughter. Like, this one hand feeds you that information so poorly that you're like, what? No, why is he crazy again? I don't know. When was this? When did this happen?
Yeah, no, it's just one of those, like, really quick and really dumb things that happens.
Yes.
Because on top of that, like, so after this, he immediately meets up with some dude on a dock, which, well, I do want to say the humor of this movie is so bad as well. It's
delightfully bad.
Oh, it's awful.
It's so atrocious.
But, like, the amount and lack of planning this man has it's
bad.
He didn't even look up how to get to the island in the first place. He just, or even called, like, ahead, like a real detective or person would ask. He just kind of shows up there and he's like,
again,
hey, I hear you're or like, do you know how to get to this island? And the dude's like, yes, I just happen to be the only dude they talk to from the mainland.
Yeah, also, this is supposed to be set during a time period where there's, like, no Google Maps to get you. You have to, like, MapQuest that shit and then print it out. And he didn't bother, like, at any point to, like, MapQuest and then be like, that doesn't actually get me to my destination. It just kind of gets me near. No, he didn't even do that. He just got in his car and started driving.
Yeah. For any younger listeners who might not know, MapQuest is something that we used to have to use to get around. We'd have to print out the entire instructions and hold it at the steering wheel while we're driving and look down every now and then to make sure we were taking the right route.
And heaven forbid you're on the highway for any great length of time because you couldn't tell when your exit was coming up and you just had to hope and pray you didn't miss it.
Yes.
And that it wasn't named something else when you got there. Thank you, Missouri.
Mm-hmm. But on top of this dude acts like he has this secure contract. They pay him so great he's not going to divulge his secrets on or even take him over there. He's not going to risk that contract. But the dude is paid off by $150.
Yeah. In what we assume is early 2000s money.
Even then.
Which isn't that much money.
That's like, if you have family, that's not even 2 weeks of groceries.
No. And, like, even by 2000 standards, that is not enough to be considered hush money.
No. Or not, it's not even hush money, it's bribe money to, hey, take me over here, man.
It's not enough to be considered, like, enough for anything. That's, like, barely enough for one drunk girl to pass a bouncer and be like, let me in.
Yeah.
Barely.
Yeah, it's just really dumb because immediately we're onto the island and we're told that this is private property and that
he's not allowed here.
No one's allowed here. And, like, how did you even get here? And it's like, how the hell do you think? Because the whole skipper dude's idea is like, you know what? I'll get you, I'll land a little bit of ways away and you can get off and row a boat in there and then I'll go ahead of you. It's like
a brilliant plan.
Yeah.
A brilliant plan. I will give the skipper guy a little bit of leeway because we have given no information about him. We don't know, like, who he is or anything about why.
This is the last time we see him anyways.
Oh yeah, we never see this. Like, we don't know anything about him. So, like, as far as we're aware, this is the most brilliant plan this man's ever thought up.
Yeah.
And he does think up a plan. Cage's character doesn't even do that.
Well, it's also like when you're trying to, like, sneak your friend into a party that you're trying to surprise your other friends and like, oh yeah, they can't come, and then you show up, and then your friend comes in like 2 minutes later because they're not going to sit around and wait outside for 15 minutes.
Yeah, or like, wow, I don't understand why I'm not allowed in the movie theater with my giant backpack that smells of fried chicken.
Yeah.
Like, this isn't a well-thought-out plan.
Or like when I lied to my mother and told her that my brother wasn't coming home for Christmas, and then he shows up for dinner.
Immediately?
No, he showed up like 8 hours later for dinner.
Okay, so he at least waited.
Yeah.
Good for him.
Well, he had to drive from Colorado.
Okay, well. Yeah, no, and like at no point is this like a good lie, and on top of that, they are meant to be very upset that he is trespassing on private property, and yet they do nothing to make him leave.
No.
Again, this is meant to be the American version of this movie. They don't put him in their own fake jail. They don't try to run him off the island, and he keeps sneaking back on. He just Nic Cages his way on. Is like, well, I'm already here, aren't I?
This explains why they couldn't set it in Texas.
That would have,
because if it was Texas,
solved the problem
this is
quickly.
private property.
Yeah, like. That's okay.
Go on, get.
That's one of the things, one of the main differences. And I don't really want to harp too hard on the differences because I do think these movies might as well just be two separate movies.
Yeah.
Like, they barely are tied together by, like, same ideas. But one of the reasons why the first version was so much better was because those people, despite not wanting strangers there, were at least welcoming enough to not be weird and suspicious. To an extent.
Carrying a bloody or a bag that's dripping blood and then like not showing him what's in it.
Yes, there's some weird people. Let's not be too out there. But like, he's given the royal tour. He's
not even given the royal tour. He gets shown like 5 houses his entire time there.
Yeah, well, more than Nic Cage.
Yeah.
Nic Cage doesn't even see a single thing.
Well, that's what I'm saying. He gets shown 5 houses.
Yeah, no, that's why the original one is better. Because, like, they at least can pretend long enough to get rid of a stranger. This island immediately is weird and suspicious, and what does Nic Cage's character do? Nothing. He's like, show me the inn, and they're like, why would we have an inn?
What's in the bag? No, he doesn't even say where's the inn. They suggest the inn for him.
That's true.
Because they get so many visitors.
Yeah. Again, this could have been like a really great way of retelling it and bringing in like ideas on how cults work and how it can be facaded into like this very friendly settlement that no one stays for very long. And instead, Nic Cage's character is so bumbling and stupid that he from the second he is on this island is like insulting people and then not asking the correct questions.
No, not at all. Well, and on top of that, like, we get kind of like the start of their whole little bit of like, oh, it's girl power, run matriarchy, where like the girls are bossing him around, they're bossing the men around. We get the little start of that.
We do get a little start of it, but at no point is like this matriarchy style like explained in a way that feels like a real cult. No. It feels like a fever dream.
It feels like a very poor attempt at a feminist plot.
Yes, and here's the other thing that we must keep in mind the entirety of this movie. This movie was written with the intent to be a horror movie. It was not written to accidentally have some horror elements like, oh, the burning at the end is a little gory, or, oh, there's some bloody scene. No, this was meant to be a psychological style, folk style horror. And at no point is it scary.
Yeah, because we don't even get like a nighttime flashback or a flashback of the explosion for like another hour into this movie.
But by that point, I'd forgotten the explosion happened.
But he goes to the inn and Willow just happens to be there.
Of course.
And it's like, oh, love at first sight. I've missed you so much.
But also, like, again, like, there's no inklings of what should be wrong where.
No.
Like, everyone is the same boring cutout of a person. There's no one feeling like, oh, maybe that's a lie. Oh, maybe that's deceit. Or, oh, maybe they're hiding something. There's none of that. There's none of that. Everyone is so two-dimensional.
Yeah. And, I mean, also his announcement of his intentions being there is so bad where, like...
It's laughable.
Smacking his badge on the counter of, like, listen up, this is why I'm here. I'm here to find this person.
Again, remember, he's not even got jurisdiction in the state.
No, even the innkeeper tells him that, like, you're a California cop. This is Washington.
You can't do nothing here.
And even then, it's private property.
And, like, we're not breaking any rules. This is a private business. I got my license hanged on the wall like y'all want.
Yeah.
What's wrong, sir?
Exactly.
But no one plays into that. No one, like, really, like, ups the ante for Cage's character. Like, he never feels in danger or that he's, you know, being, in the way of these people. Because they're, like, NPCing around him.
Oh, but he always is in danger because, the bee allergy and the killing of the bee was the dumb aspect of but...
I forgot about the bee allergy. I'm not gonna lie to you.
The director used that to add a sense of danger to the movie, which...
I don't like it.
There's minimal, like, little bee motifs. There are the bee motifs you want if you look hard enough, or if you think the mead cup or the mead glass that or tankard he's using, being clear at the bottom, feels very much like a hollow honeycomb. And also the door has a little honeycomb or like honeycomb shape in the metalwork over the glass.
Again, like someone at the prop department was given some level of like instruction on what the idea was supposed to be. And then like either didn't have time to follow through and like make it blaringly obvious. Or like someone in the dialogue or directing spots didn't tell anyone to play into any of this. Because it's such a small portion of the movie that you don't care, don't notice, or don't remember.
You wanna know why it's also dumb?
Why?
It's because this man goes to this island after being on their website,
oh yeah, I forgot about
knowing that their whole ordeal or their whole deal is honey.
It is literally the entire island's business is honey.
And he still went to go investigate basically Bee Island, which
with a death bee allergy, apparently.
And it's supposed to be this stupid tie-in to this matriarchal ideal that, it's women run, the men are the drones.
Which could have been cool. It could have been done well. I don't think he needs a bee allergy.
No.
Because despite this supposedly being, like, a big danger for him, it's barely played up.
No.
Like, to the point where you legit forget he has a bee allergy. Instead of having him constantly paranoid about running into bees or going outside or, like, seeing live bees and him, like, freaking out, none of that happens.
Yeah.
You immediately forget about bees. You immediately forget about the bee allergy. You forget about the EpiPen.
Yeah, I don't think he even has an EpiPen this whole time.
I think at one point there is very briefly an EpiPen.
No, they tell him they got to him in time.
Yes.
When he does eventually get stung, yeah.
He
doesn't even use it. He's saved by someone else using it.
Which we'll get to. But, like, yeah. No, I don't think the bee allergy is needed. I think just a more presence of actual live bees would have been nice.
Yeah, just use more of the motif around it. Don't go super heavy on it, but, like...
Should have some close-ups of some fucking bees.
Yeah.
Somewhere, anywhere.
Yeah, no, exactly.
I don't think we barely see bees in this movie.
We see a bunch of CGI bees, a bunch of bees at the end, and this one bee. There's 3 or 4 times we see bees in this movie.
I need more bees. I need so many more bees. I need the same amount of bees that there are flower crowns in Midsummer.
Where on a scale of the Wicker Man to the Bee Movie do you need bees?
Honestly, the amount of bees in the Bee Movie was appropriate.
Alright. Also, scientifically inaccurate.
But... of course, the bee dates a woman. But other than that...
I mean... So, it's about 50-50 in the movie of male to female bees.
That is also a problem.
Yeah.
But, like, no, there's just... This movie has now 3 running main plot devices that it's trying to solve simultaneously. And yet, it does not lean in hard to remind the audience of any of them. We do not remember his fear of bees, because we never see bees. We do not remember that he has...
We do see bees.
We see 4 scenes of bees and some background details of bees. I need more bees if I'm going to be reminded that Nic Cage's character is afraid of bees.
I mean, the few scenes we see him with bees, he's afraid. The first scene he sees kills it. Now, why would you go do it the way...
That's good. I need more of that throughout the rest of the movie, because the next time I remember seeing bees, they're being poured on his head.
There's a couple more in between.
I need more bees. I need a heavier emphasis on the bee. I also would like a heaviest... If we are going to pursue the insanity, which at this point in the movie, if you are very closely looking for the insanity plotline, you can kind of see where the cycle of, like, manic and, like, followed into crazy cycling spinning. Because as we've talked about, Nic Cage, while having bad movies, is not a bad actor. He just tries unique methods.
Yeah.
And we know he can do insanity well, even by this point in his career.
Go check out our episode on Vampire's Kiss.
Exactly. So the man knows how to properly, at this point, he's done the research on how to display someone who is going into a cycle. And I do think he acted that in the movie. I think the movie poorly shows him, enough for the audience to remember that that's what's happening to him.
Mm-hmm.
I think that, Nic Cage's character goes through these, cycles of being, really big on himself and then, losing it. And this is one of them. This is definitely one of those scenes.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, I forgot, because we barely talk about it. He, sometimes listens to his little podcasts, and sometimes pops a pill.
Yeah.
And occasionally is haunted by a ghost girl. But, that honestly could be the other plot point.
Yeah, and I mean, on top of that, you bring up this psychological bit, because immediately after this, we have Willow telling, with the letter in, warning him not to believe anything he sees or hears, and, I mean, he still goes out to meet her, and it's
Yeah, and it's a very unrewarding scene.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, what is she hoping to, reveal that secretly he's the dad? Or, here's the thing, I genuinely think this man fancies himself smarter than he actually is, because unless for some reason she left and had a one-night fling,
mm-hmm.
and granted we don't really get a full timeline of
That's
how this
true.
girl is, or when they split up, kind of feels like he should have figured out, put two and two together of oh, she left me on this date. Oh, this girl's 13 years old. Wait, she left me 12 years ago?
Yeah, it feels like he should have been able to math this together.
No.
But he doesn't. Or, it is a detail that is somehow, elusive to the audience to know that he has mathed this through. But he doesn't seem to, really... If this is meant to be his daughter, he barely, acts like the daughter and the stranger's child. He acts like they are the same.
Cross-eyed Hobbs has more mental understanding than this man.
That's true, and it took her 4 years to remember that I come over every Thursday to record a podcast in her home.
She still does it. She's kind of dumb.
She's a little dumb. But yeah, no, this man treats a stranger's child and his own supposed child that we assume he's always wanted a family, because why else is he here? But he treats them the same. He treats strangers and what is supposed to be the love of his life the same.
Yeah, there's not this whole... there's no emotional drive for him to even be there.
No.
And to be fair, his detective friend did make good points of well, why? She left you.
Yes.
It's not your problem, not your kid.
Which, because the movie blatantly points it out to you, is really hard to ignore for the rest of the movie.
Maybe he did math it, and that's why, but we were never told that's why.
I would have appreciated him mentioning, being there's a chance it's my kid, and I've always wanted a kid.
Sometimes telling over showing does work.
Yes. Sometimes it would be helpful, I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah. But at night, the people in the tavern are really laying it thick with the whole Wicker Man's return, and
Ooh.
we get to run into basically the substitute for the landlord's daughter in this movie, because who knows whose daughter.
Okay, I do kind of appreciate this movie trick. As someone with face blindness and also the lack of costuming in this movie, it is a little confusing. They purposefully picked actresses who looked similar, and or had the same actress play multiple roles to create a confusion and maybe inside the idea of some incest happening. Yeah. A little bit. And so I do think that works. Granted, it took me how many years of watching this movie to catch it, because I can't recognize two different faces to save my life. But I know it probably did bother other people.
Here's the other thing with that, though, too. They only did that with one character.
I know that they only, doubled up one character. However, a lot of the ladies, minus the ones who are clearly meant to be very different, who they cast women who are very different size, their height different, they are bodily built different, they have a very unique face. With the exception of those actresses who play roles that are meant to be, a gateway between the outside world and this island, the rest of the actresses are purposefully dressed and styled very similarly. And I do think that that works. They all have very similar hair. They all have very, like, light brown to light gold hairstyle. They're kind of all plainly dressed. They all kind of have a roughly the same height. And we have a couple of them or one actress who plays two roles purposefully to, like, who's, like, front and center on the screen for that moment for you to be like, oh, wait, hold on.
Yeah,
So,
Chris is talking about Molly Parker, who plays two.
yeah. And, like, she's forcefully put in front of the audience, but I do think they purposely picked most of the ladies to look very similar to kind of help, like, reinstall the bee concept and also the incest bit.
Yeah, even that. I mean, there's just people who have those genetic combinations where, like, it's like, oh, yeah, you're insert this family name.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a... She doesn't even, like, really even serve, like, the same role. There's no tempting of this character or whatever.
No, I do love how, at least in the original movie, the character is very tempted by the sex appeal of the cult. And, like, granted, he's a Christian man and would never be tempted, but he thinks about it at night. He's tempted away in the darkness hours. Not Nic Cage. Nic Cage's man cannot be tempted, damn it.
Yeah, because he is tormented by his PTSD and another nightmare of car explosion.
And also, at this point, have they stolen his tapes yet, or has he noticed? I can't remember. All I know is that they steal his tapes and it bothers him a lot.
He's still listening to his tapes. He goes to bed listening to them
He goes to bed listening to his little self-help podcast, which again, whatever helps you, very good. I question how much help Nic Cage's character is getting here.
Self-help audiobook. There is a difference.
It is a difference, because let's be real, podcast didn't exist yet.
No. Or if it did, it was like basically radio.
It was a radio show. Yeah.
But we get this little girl running at night and crying through the city, or not even the city.
Small town.
Not even town.
Yeah.
Cluster or spread apart cluster of houses.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, which, I mean, okay, so here's the thing that bothers me is, well, Butte wanted to isolate him in comparison to the freedom that he thought the other character had, which the other character's on an island full of people that don't like him, which...
Yeah.
That feels...
Or actively trying to seduce him.
And they're allowing him to go everywhere he wants. Like, just because you spread stuff out doesn't mean it's freedom. Like, if this is supposed to be a commune or a village or something, where you'd see no gardens other than the bees, where there's no farmland, all of it is just like, oh, here's a cute little quaint little house, here's our inn, here's our honeycomb hive or field of bees.
Yeah, and, like, there's no, like, this place doesn't feel like it's an actual place to live. It feels very much like an amusement park where, like, oh, here's the one house that we have, the two houses we have, and, like, here's the inn that's also the restaurant, and here's the one other thing in our town. And granted, like, normal small towns are spread out, and, like, granted, that might be how many things, but Nic Cage's character barely explores this place. He barely explores these 3 places he's given.
No.
Which I also think is part of the reason why this one feels so much less like a real cult. Even though the premise is a little goofy, but, like, it could have been done more.
Yeah.
Part of the reason it feels less like a real cult is in the original one, the character had room to explore. Even if he was being, like, harassed the whole time, he did bother to explore and be like, oh, they live here. This is where the school is. They have children. Look at the children. Like, children learn about penises, but they have children here.
Yeah.
This Nic Cage's character, this version of the movie and the story, like, as far as we know, there's like 8 people living here, and they shuttle in and out every night.
Yeah, no, that's the exact same thing. It doesn't feel like a community. We get like little bits here and there, but like,
and like there doesn't seem to be any activities in the town. Like, at least in the first one, like, there's different things happening in different places. Some people are out dancing naked. Some people are harvesting food.
Yeah.
Well, and in this town, they're all like, well, at night we sit around and drink, and then we all go home. Where is home? We won't tell you.
And there's no, like, any build of, like, opposition to him. They're just letting him... They're not letting him do whatever. They're orchestrating everything, as they say later on.
But at the same time, Nic Cage's character doesn't feel like he's trying.
No.
Like, he doesn't feel like he's trapped. He doesn't feel like there's not, like, him being watched or him being locked in his room.
Yeah, I'll get to that in a minute.
Yeah, he's just a really bad detective. Even though I know he's not supposed to be a detective, but, like, he doesn't try. Yeah.
Well, on top of that, like, he goes into this barn and, like, puts himself in danger and just, like, it's just this little bit to add danger that doesn't really add to anything. And, like, just, it doesn't do anything. And, like, LaBute said that he wanted to avoid nighttime shots. But, like,
But there's a lot of nighttime shots in this movie for someone who didn't want to shoot nighttime shots.
No, this is the only... There's 2 nighttime shots. There's this and there's one other one.
Yeah.
That's it. There's... It just doesn't, like, work. Like, even if you add the nighttime shots, whether it's day or night, it doesn't add to the mystery.
No, it would have been the same.
Yeah.
It would have been the same.
And from immediately from here, he wakes up in the morning and he's looking at photos and he's informed about the cursed crop that they had last year. That
he didn't even ask about it.
No, exactly.
No.
There's no mystery or buildup.
He doesn't ask any goddamn questions in this movie.
Yeah, he's just told where to go because immediately after this, he goes to talk to the innkeeper's daughter substitute, and he's basically told, oh, well, you should go to the school and talk to another person and not even look at records. Like, it's just like, go talk to this person, go talk to that person.
With all that happening, though, I think by this point he's also already been told that, like, the lord of the land or the lady of the land is this person.
Yeah.
She's, like, the mastermind of us all. Woo! He's been told this, like, by 3 or 4 people by this point. And he doesn't...
Yeah.
He doesn't ask any questions like, well, tell me about her. Where could I find her? Did she set all this up? Like, no. He doesn't ask any questions about that.
And on top of that, like, they try doing this whole, like, subversion of the substitute landlord's daughter asking, take me with you when you leave. It's like...
I don't care.
It goes nowhere because he has Willow there, and, like, it's not going to tempt him. It's just like, well, the first movie had a pretty blonde woman, so we gotta add one for this one.
And I think the real difference here is it's not necessarily that, like, it has her or it doesn't have her. It's the fact that Nic Cage's character is so anti-romantic and, like, so opposed to, like, seeing or even thinking about a tit. He's like a monk, honestly. Like, he's not interested in any of one's advances.
No.
He's barely interested in any, like, of the quote-unquote earthly pleasures that this cult could tempt him with.
Well, here's the thing, is, like, he's not even given that temptation.
No.
Because this is, like, the one scene that happens with it, besides, like, him running into her upstairs, which, so
but,
romantic.
Like, they don't even, like, play up him, like, oogling pretty ladies in the bar, or, like, noticing them. Like, he is the most unobservant person, even for someone who claims to be interested.
Because he only gets hard for Willow.
Yeah, but he also doesn't seem interested in Willow. He doesn't ask after her a whole bunch. He doesn't like try and follow her back to her home or like question her on like whether or not she still loves him.
No.
As far as we're aware, he is not interested in anything.
Except finding this little girl, which actually sounds bad.
It does sound real bad, doesn't it? But yeah, no, like he's not interested in like any portion of how the cult is run. He doesn't seem intrigued by, like, when they say, like, oh, well, you know, look, it's mostly ladies. Or he walks around the town, like, he's not interested.
Or repulsed. I think that's the other thing.
He's also not repulsed. He's just existing.
Yeah.
He just absorbs the information and is like, good to know.
And then.
Like, and part of the reason that this bothers me more than just an and then is it makes this character, and honestly all the characters he interacts with, really, really flat. Because there doesn't feel like any, like, drive to anyone. I know later on they tell us, like, oh, we orchestrated all this. It doesn't feel like it.
No. Yeah, no, exactly. Because, and then we're on to the schoolhouse, which, cute, quaint, one-room schoolhouse, very Americana.
Yeah, great. Again, could use a little bit more time and detailing, honestly, questions.
Yeah, I mean, because immediately, like, there's not even...
Like, they don't explain the schooling or the thought process to him.
Well, there's not even anything controversial in, like, what they're teaching. Like, it's just like...
No, and like...
then the bees do X, Y, and Z. I don't even remember what they talk about. And at least in the... I know we're going to compare to the original, because it's a remake, so you got to at certain points.
Yes.
But, like, there's no controversy of him showing up, and they're talking about the phallic symbol of the maypole is really a penis.
Or even just, like in the original one, part of the reason why it worked was because, yes, it was shocking, but the way it was described to the character and thusly to the audience was like, yes, we know that to your civilized standards this is shocking, but, like, this is the way of the world.
Yeah.
And we don't believe in, like, hiding that from our children. We want to tell them that right out front. And, like, this cult kind of sort of says similar stuff. They're like, well, we base ourselves on the bees. We think they're a perfect society. So we model ourselves on the bees. Great. But, like, at no point is that controversial to Nicolas Cage's character.
No.
Nor does it shock him.
No.
And also, he does not seem interested. He just is like, Roger. That's a fun fact of the day. File that away with the fact that prairie dogs have names for people. Like,
I didn't know that.
They have a very advanced vocabulary and can describe humans.
Fascinating.
Because they yell it to other prairie dogs, and they're like, the tall, fat one wearing a pink shirt is coming to us, run! But in prairie dog, I don't know prairie dog very well.
I'd be impressed if you did.
I only know, like, one thing about prairie dog, because someone on TikTok owns one, and it looks adorable.
I know they're cannibals.
Most rodents are cannibals of some extent.
Yeah. Fun rabbit hole. But, anywho, back to the Wicker Man. I mean, there's just so much that doesn't really get flushed out of, like, where did the boys go? I mean, there's nice little nods in the background to, like, a caged straw man in the background. And also, like, the torturing of the bird just comes out of nowhere. He was like, this is her desk, and a bird flies out. It's like, the bird wasn't making noise beforehand?
And also, well, I can agree with the bird not making noise, because if it's in there long enough in the dark, birds go to sleep.
Okay.
But like, they had to catch it, put it in the desk, and wait for him to show up, and have that be a long enough time for the bird to have been comfortable and fall asleep, which I honestly don't think would have happened.
No.
The bird would have been in there way too long.
A day or two.
Yeah, and like, they over and over again portray the young, like, girl children in this village or cult as, like, being mischievous and pranksters and little imps, almost.
This is the only time we see that shit, though.
No, they, like, pull a prank on him later where one of them pretends to be dead in a closet.
Oh, yeah, that's just a nod to the original.
I know, but, like, they on multiple occasions, like, have the little girls, like, giggling behind him, or, like, being nosy. Like, they are a part that clearly someone thought about at some point, and be like, oh, well, they're being raised to be little monsters sort of mindset. But it's not explained. Instead, there's just asshole children bullying a grown adult man who, honestly, I wonder about how he's doing.
Yeah, I mean...
But it's not in the same way of, like, oh, the movie is telling me he is going insane. I have to infer that from watching this movie 5 goddamn times and knowing Nic Cage's acting career. Yeah. Which doesn't feel fair to the general audience.
No, well, and on top of that, like, their whole confrontation leads to nothing because Sister Rose pulls him out of the classroom and is, like, trying to explain to him, we don't use death in our society. Like, we believe you are reincarnated.
But they also don't explain that very well. Because, like in the first one, it is heavily played up. Like, oh, no, like, we were really leaning into the whole idea of, like, oh, she's not dead, she's been reincarnated as fill in blank here, like, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. That's why we use, like, nature names is what we want to come back as, sort of bullshit. No, he just gets pissed that everyone's named after a plant, and then she tells him, like, oh, we don't use that word here, like, it's a naughty word. Yeah. And Nic Cage's character is just like, oh yes, naughty word, Roger. I understand. I will not say that bad word again.
No, he's not even like, Roger, I won't say it again. He's like, I don't give a shit. She's gone. She's dead.
And yet, he continues to, like, abide by their rules.
Yeah, it's just a bunch of dumb shit. Also, I do want to point out that there is a half-assed maypole in the background.
There is a half-assed maypole. I love half-assed maypoles. As someone who danced around many a half-assed maypole.
It's just, it tries so hard, and I think that's why we tie back to the original, is it tries to be the original, but new.
It does. That is, I think, really its main problem, is it tries too hard to be the original. In fact, one of the quotes that I dug up from Nic Cage, one of his fans during a live stream to promote Ghost Rider, so not even this movie, asked him about his role in this movie and whether or not he felt that, like, he would like to redo it or rethink it if he had the chance to. And even he was like, yeah, you know, looking back on it, we really shouldn't have, like, been inspired by, I really should have, like, done our own thing, but with similar concepts. And he mentions, like, you know, right now I'm really into Japanese movies and Japanese horror, and I really should have done something more with that. And I was like, damn, that would have been cool, but also weird.
Yeah, I mean, I would have watched it. I don't think it would have done as well either, but...
No, it wouldn't have, but, like, at the same time, I can see how that would have been more unique, having something based off of this concept, but with a completely different twist.
Or fuck, just go Native American with this. Like, they do mention later on that they thought of it, but decided not to do it, and it's like, that would have been much more interesting than, like...
But at the same time, the amount of research done for this movie is already strikingly low, and that is for a movie that they had research already handed to them.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, if you pay attention to the original, it had the research done.
And granted, like, it's research that's, like, meant to be controversial basis to begin with.
Yeah.
But the movie plays on that. This one doesn't. This one's just like, we went with the bees, but at the same time, they didn't really... But at the same time, for a society that is meant to be basing itself around bees, they sure fucking didn't, did they?
Yeah. No, it's just really dumb. Because on top of that, like, we bring up some of, like, the religious aspects, and
Yes.
he's guided to a church, or he's told of a church,
Mm-hmm.
which makes no fucking sense.
No.
For the future lore that's established on this island.
No, it sure doesn't.
And also, they kind of start to hint that maybe the people in the car were a plant to traumatize them, like...
Again, I think at one point someone mentions, like, maybe there wasn't anyone in the car at all.
Yeah.
And so, like, then he starts, like, changing his hallucination, which, again, if we're gonna go with that plot, fine. But, like, I need one of these 3 plot points to disappear.
Yeah, I mean, it's like Jacob's Ladder, where, like, the plot, like, the paranoia and, like, the delusions of that movie just build and build and build.
Mm-hmm.
This is just like, oh yeah, remember, you're kind of crazy, Edward.
Yeah, but, like, again, unless you know Nic Cage's acting style and know what he thinks he is showing, you would never catch that he is trying to portray a man in a spiral.
No.
Because there is no music building to it, there is no, like, the flashbacks don't help.
Nope.
They pretty much show the same thing over and over again, but there's no added tension to it. It's not, like, increasing the confusion for the audience.
They only changed the dream sequence once this entire movie, and it's, like, almost towards the end.
And it's not happening in such a way that adds any level of anxiety to the watcher. Like, it's not zooming in an anxious way, the camera angle isn't different. Like, yes, the, like, color saturation is, but it's done more as, like, it's a dream.
Ew,
and
it's
less...
in black and white, so it's in the past.
Yes, that sort of thing, as opposed to, like, he's losing it, and, like, the colors are blending, or, like, actively seeing something shift or change. Like, none of that happens. So you're just left stuck being like, okay, why did that happen in the first place then? Why is this part of the story?
No, exactly. Which also leads into, like, why is the church? Because he goes to the church ruins, which...
Again, yeah.
The religious aspect doesn't work, since Edward has no direct, like, signs that he's religious in this movie at all until, like, maybe the end, when it's too late.
It would have been much better, much like the original, if they had given him, like, a strong face. Like, hey, this man is devout Catholic. That's, like, just part of his character. It's not even, like, a major plot point. It's just who he is. How he was raised. No, they don't even do that. He's just, like, on a tour to look at the island. Ooh, ruins of a church.
Yeah, no, exactly. Which, nothing happens there other than he runs into Willow, who, I mean...
does nothing.
Yeah.
This interaction does nothing.
Other than show her dumb face, and she's like, will you forgive me that I lied to you, that I left you, that... Shocking. She's the missing girl's your daughter.
Yes.
Which, I get that this part is supposed to change to make the meaning deeper, and, like, he's kind of rude to the community compared to the original, or rude to the issue rather than being a stranger. But also, I love the line that just sums up his character this entire movie, where Willow asks, can you forgive me? Forgive you? I'm lost! No shit!
Yeah, because also, can we, for a second, bitch about Willow's dialogue? Willow's dialogue is essentially the same dialogue in a point-and-click adventure game. Where you're
not wrong.
She gives you, like, essentially 3 sentences at a time at most. And you are supposed to have asked more questions from your dialogue drop-down menu.
But you chose the right answer.
No, he chose the, and now I'm leaving, bit at the bottom of the dialogue instead of asking any questions. So, like, her NPC ass doesn't offer anything, despite being arguably the most, like, character he should be coming to the most, to be like, hey, the fuck is this? When did you join this cult? Why did you join this cult? Didn't you ever tell me we had a daughter? Like, is it my daughter? He doesn't ask any of this.
No, he doesn't have to because it's all given to him. She explains everything from the get-go. She's like, I left because I didn't feel like I could belong here. I really loved you, but once I found out I was pregnant, I couldn't leave my family behind, so I had to leave you to return back to this island.
She does that, but in the same way that an NPC tells you shit when you walk too close to them, and you can just hear them in the speakers talking, that's the same type of dialogue you're getting, because Nic Cage's character doesn't seem to react to any of this. The only, emotion we get is occasionally a little quick outburst of anger, but it's really portrayed as more frustration.
Yeah.
And he's frustrated with the wrong thing. The audience is also frustrated, but we are not frustrated about the same thing.
No, we're frustrated because this is an incompetent movie.
It is an incompetent movie, and a huge portion of that is the dialogue.
Yeah. Because, immediately from here, we don't even focus on the church very long because we go back to Willow's house, or what we can assume is Willow's house.
There shouldn't have been a church to begin with, but yes, onto someone's living facility, please.
And now he's told of Dr. Moss and the photographs, which, to be fair, all the porches in this movie are pretty cool. The houses are kind of cool. I'll give it that.
They are cool, but again, remember, this is meant to be a society that has supposed to have been based completely around bees. And bees don't live in little houses.
No, they live in hives.
They live one big hive.
Yeah, like Corbusier would have liked.
Corbusier would have fucking loved bee people. Oh my god, the man would have just been salivating at the mouth to have everyone stacked on top of each other.
Yeah, United habitation is pretty much like a giant hive.
Yeah, and how cool would it have been if they said we overtook this island, the big mansion from the original movie, we took it over, and now we all live in the big mansion communal style. Yeah. Except for the men. We put them in a little hut in the background. Or in the basement. Yeah. Or in a cave on the cliff.
I would have dug that, or at least a densely clustered group of houses.
Yeah, have almost touching, or even townhouse style.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Row house.
But this movie's so desperate to remind you of English styling, because that's what the first one did, that it weirdly just kind of becomes generic.
Because we have to make it quaint. We have to make it appealing to the aesthetic of what we want this movie to be instead of the concept.
Yeah, and it loses a lot of it because, again, they constantly are harping on the bee motif.
Yeah.
And yet they don't really try.
Yeah. No, exactly. And instead of going to Dr. Moss's house to find out about the photographs, he goes to get the plane radio, which just happens to still be there. You can't think that this dude is only, making touchdown and then leaving the next day?
Oh, yeah, no. The pilot makes no sense. No. But we're gonna ignore him, because he's barely in this.
I'm not gonna ignore the pilot, but I'm going to ignore how dumb Edward is.
Edward is the stupidest.
He has trapped himself on this island. How is he planning to get back in the first place if he knows this is the only way on and off the island?
Yeah.
He has to talk to this dude again and has to re-talk to him hey, I know you got me on here, but will another $150 get me off?
And as far as
both ways.
Yeah, and as far as we know, he's given all of his money already away.
Yeah.
Not only did he go without MapQuest directions, he went without an escape plan.
Yeah, no. And, he doesn't even try for the radio initially. He just sits on the dock until, he sees a dead body under the docks, which he assumes is his daughter, and it turns out to be some stupid-ass double dream that doesn't really work at all.
Again, if we were gonna play into him losing it, I would have been okay with that, but if we're doing that, we need to remove the bee problem.
Yeah.
One problem at a time.
You've got to add more psychological elements than just okay, he occasionally has a dream or a flashback about this car explosion that may or may not have happened that is also a parallel to his now missing daughter.
I need more play up on the PTSD that he experienced from this. I need more play into his time as a police officer or his heartbreak of her leaving him at the altar. But instead, we just occasionally get him losing his marbles for no reason.
No. He has that stupid dream and then he swims out to the dock to find out that the radio's broken and now he knows he's trapped, which is dumb as shit.
I do love that he swims in what appears to be freezing ice cold water in Washington on an island. And just kind of lets himself ring out and is just man, that sucked, as opposed to being damn, that's cold.
You know what would have been a cool twist?
Mm-hmm.
Is you know how, like, in Titanic, it shifts from one style of movie to the next?
Mm-hmm.
If it had started out as, oh, he's on this island and he's trying to find the answer, save this girl, to realizing, oh shit, I need to get off. And then it became a survival film of him trying to get off the island.
And set all of it in, like, the November-esque time when, like, maybe ice and winter can play into it. That would have been dope. Yeah.
Instead, and now we are on to Moss's house, which he just knew where it was. We don't even have any indication that he's asking for direction. He just is showing up at these different locations.
It's the same way the man drives. He just drives and hopes he finds it.
Yeah. Which I also hate the scene too, because, like, the Rituals of Ancients book is conveniently there. Like,
yeah.
What was the point? Also, what ancients? We haven't even built up of, like, where this cult's coming from, because
they barely have played into the bee motif.
No, and on top of that, like, he reads the note that ties their religion into the Incans, the Egyptians, and quote-unquote other religions. And it just,
I would like to know deeply what other religions they think this is.
It just feels like some of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn mashup shit, where they're just like, we like this part of this religion, we like this part, we're gonna mash it together.
And again...
And now kiss.
Yes, no, and now kiss is very much, like, when written down, it doesn't work. It doesn't make sense. I really wish they would have just left with the vagueness of, like, we based ourselves off the bees.
Yeah.
Like, and just left it at that. It would have been fine.
Even, like, make it an interesting aspect of it. Not even that it has to be the bees, but, like, the bees are the symbol of some sun god or something. Like,
sure, again, if you cannot do the research to justify using an actual historical god or goddess, make one up. No one cares.
No, exactly. Make it so ancient and so carried on that people forgot about it, except for this tiny group of people that somehow survived the Christianification of Europe, but whatever.
And honestly, that would have played more into the cult mindset, because honestly, that's how a lot of cult bullshit happens, is they start with something that people kind of sort of recognize, like bees, and then they play it up until a point that's like, and now you're giving me all your money.
Yeah, no, exactly. Which, I mean, even then, like, the whole bit with Moss is shortly lived, because now we're on to Time to Confront Willow, which confusing to hell. We learn about the Day of Death and Rebirth is a story that never gets told throughout this movie. I mean, it's just mentioned like once or twice, and it's just a bunch of catchy words to make it interesting and trying to tie into the original.
Yeah, which it doesn't, because the original one, despite having like a loose definition of like what religions and like ideas it was pulling, it at least had concrete ones. It at least knew which ones they were and was like, okay, well, we know this one was bullshit, but this cult is bullshit. Yeah. So deal with it.
We have these two books. These are our sources. Instead, this one's just like, but bees. Nicolas Cage.
And honestly, they should have just left it at bees, and it would have worked better, because bees themselves do have an interesting policy around death. Like, they're a smart little insect. They know that dead bodies in the hive are not good, so they bring them out and chuck them off. Yeah. Like, that could have been a more interesting method of being like, oh, well, once a year we take all our dead and yeet them off a cliff.
Yeah, like in Midsummer.
Like in Midsummer. But like a different, like, lore pulling. Like, just be like, oh, well, we studied bees a lot. We're, like, really into bees. Lean into that. That would have made more sense.
Yeah. Well, and on top of that, like, he goes to confront her, and then gives up real quick for the big smooch scene.
Yeah, which honestly is the least satisfying smooch scene of all smooch scenes. And I'm not saying that because it's Nic Cage.
No.
I'm saying that because the passion that is supposed to be built up between these two characters feels less fake than if it had been intentionally meant to be fake.
Yeah, we've had 4 interactions between them. We've had, they meet at the end. Mm-hmm. She tells him not to believe anything. Mm-hmm. Oh, by the way, the girl that's missing, that's your daughter. And now they kiss.
Again, I need backstory as to like, oh, he's always loved her. He never gave up.
This is that bit.
I know it's meant to be that bit, but from the get-go, I need pictures of her in his house. I need like, hey man, from the police station, them being like, hey, I know you never really gave up on the case of her and her being missing. I know you're still looking. This might be a lead. Like, all of that could have been building up.
Even just a photo in his wallet.
Even a photo in his wallet that he regularly looks at and then hallucinates would have been better.
Yeah. Yeah. Which,
a dream sequence, for Christ's sakes, I'll take it.
We've had dream sequences, though.
With her! Not some weird child.
But is she supposed to be the woman in the car with the child? Ooh.
See, that could have been more interesting, but they purposefully fuck that up.
Yeah, no, that would have been great. Like, we talk about them doubling up one specific character. If she had been the woman in the car, and he's like, do I know you from somewhere? You look so much like someone I know.
That would have been so much better.
No, exactly.
That would have been so much better. And then having the police tell him, like, oh, there was no one in the car.
Yeah.
And then, like, again, pictures in his home, them leading up to it.
Really play on the psychological elements and not just be like, okay, he's kind of going crazy.
And now they kiss like Barbie dolls. Like, this is stupid.
No, exactly. And right from here, like, I mean, we don't get any direction on where to go.
No. Well, we do, because he's been told throughout the entirety of him being on this island where to fucking go, and he's yet to go.
Sister Summer Isle, which she runs into men loading logs and helps them as they fall, which it's just to show that the men are mute and subservient, but
it's not done well.
No, well, and I think the reason it's not done well is because, you know, the way it's done is the men, they're not doing like they're subservient. Yeah, well, we can kind of see that. But they're just doing normal men's work. Like, it's just like, okay, so they're loading the logs. Have the big Gertrude chick from the inn being loaded, or someone like that loading the logs. It's like, okay, I can see the men are being the dainty, subservient
like they're the housemakers in this society. Yes. No, that is something that I think really sets apart not just the original version, but honestly a lot of other folk like cult style horrors that we've talked about, is it requires everyone in the cult being very fully and like animatedly involved to make the cult believable. And in this cult, the men look like they have either had like lobotomies done on their brains, or that they are so unhappy they're willing to like potentially revolt at any moment.
But
and that doesn't work for what they've been trying to set up.
Or that they've accepted their fate is the other one. But like,
sure, but again, it doesn't set up.
But the thing is, like, we hear them talk earlier on, like in the inn, in the night, like just the night before, we hear them talking.
And again, this doesn't play into how bees actually are, which again is supposed to be like the main backdrop for how the society is, and how much cooler could this movie have been is if the workloads divided amongst the town matched up with how bees divide themselves.
Yeah.
And don't tell me that. Just let me, as the nerd who knows too much about bees, devise that. We do kind of get a little bit of that later on with Sister Summer Isle's sex man. Yeah, but like again, like the parts of it work, and then parts of it they completely ignore the bee logic. So to the point where like they have to tell you what's happening. No, exactly. And this by the way, this is the second part with the bees. Again, it's been like an hour and a half at this point, where he's stirring up the bees on the way to Sister Summer Isle. Is just a dumb way, like with the barn, to add some attempted danger to the movie. But again, by this point, I have forgotten he's allergic to bees. Yeah, it's just been so long. Just a dumb action scene that doesn't really add anything. Although I will say the hive pattern is kind of cool. Yes. Arrange the houses like hives. Yeah, or like on the path. The pathways are like the honeycombs. Mm-hmm. Like do something cool like that. Yeah, no, there's so many options. Yeah, because right after this, we just get a dumb repeat of the same dream again. Yeah, he keeps having the same one, but not enough of the dream changes to make it feel like he's truly losing his marbles. I can't remember if this is like the last one of these that we have where he has, or his friend cop comes over and is covered with bees, which by the way, she really was covered in bees in that scene. Good for her. Yeah, kudos. That's terrifying. But also so dope. And also looks so much better than the later bees. Yeah. Oh, and we were wrong. There is no EpiPen. He was saved through old treatments. I'm going to say it's an old EpiPen. Yeah, sure. A slightly expired EpiPen. I'll go with that. But, I mean, it's just such dumb build-up in dialogue between them, because he's just also threatening being this cop on the island that's so spread out. But they've also already established to both everyone living there and the audience that he has no power here. No, exactly. And just like the harassment between him and Sister Summer's Isle, there's no real build-up. It's just kind of like, oh, I dislike you because you're a stranger here. Well, I dislike you because you're not telling me where to go right now. And another huge portion, she is supposed to be the equivalent of Christopher Lee's character in the original.
Yeah.
And that character, while not having, like, a ton of screen time, like, he had enough for you to be like, oh, the leader. He, like, interacted with with his people. He did a little tour.
He guided the young boy to fuck the innkeeper's daughter.
Yeah, like, he definitely felt like an actual cult leader. Whereas this one, like, because Nicolas Cage's character hates her for just, lying to him, at least that's what he says, we get so little interaction because of that we barely see her, so we barely understand, like, her influence in the community.
This was our first time seeing her, and, like, we've had, like, maybe 2 people say, oh, Sister Summer Isle this, Summer Sister Isle that, and we're divulged the entire history of this town, like, in, like, a couple sentences, instead of being like, well, this town used to be Christian, and we had some, my father came to this town when the town was failing, and so we helped turn it around with the old ways. That's what worked. Instead, this gets some bullshit persecution story of...
I hate it.
They started in the 17th century and migrated to Salem, where they moved away from Salem because they were persecuted in Salem, where they settled here in 1850s.
Which bothers me even more, because while the B motifs could have been played up more, and I have complained about that enough, they have now thrown in witches. But not even well done.
No.
It's just like a loose, like, oh, you know the word Salem, and you know that witches came from Salem, and so, like, you get to make the connection. It's like, no, what? Hold on. That doesn't make any sense. You just told me what this was about.
Well, I think part of that issue is, and I've started to hate this more and more, especially with knowing more of the history, is our absolute obsession with the Salem witch trials.
Yeah.
I think they included in anything witchy because it was such a fanatic blip on the American history compared to, like, not knowing, like, okay, well, the witch trials in Europe lasted hundreds of years. We were at the tail end when that whole thing was dying out. So it's like our, like, one little claim of, like, oh yes, the Battle of Waterloo, my uncle was in it, but he was, like, one of the cooks.
Yeah. But, like, again, like, it's one of those things where it's so hyper-specific, and it's so well-known. Like, even people who don't know great detail about the Salem witch trials know basics about it. Enough to be like, hold on, that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
It'd be the equivalent of, like, her being like, yeah, during the Boston Tea Party, we all showed up here. And it's like, how do those things what do those go together?
Well, we don't even know their magic system or what they're trying to do, where they were just like, oh, we've used this old method. Oh, we like bees.
Just stick with the bees.
We had the Incans, the Egyptians, and other religions.
Yeah, again, just stick with bees.
Yeah.
I don't need witchcraft. I don't need religion. You're some weird ass cult who's really into bees. Stay with that. Just stick to that.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Like, that makes more sense than a lot of actual real life cults.
Yeah, and I mean, now we're finally given permission to dig up the grave, which, I mean, we don't even have that. We don't even have that buildup of, like, trying to inspect the grave. He's just like...
And now, we get to the part of the movie that, for me, threw me for a fucking loop.
Okay.
He is a police officer. He knows, or at least should be somewhat aware, that just being told you have permission to dig up a grave, by not the family, mind you, by someone, the town mayor, is not enough by law to dig up a grave.
He has been given permission. He's been told to go ask Summer Isle from Willow.
No. So here's the process. You have to ask all immediate family. There is paperwork involved. The state needs to, or the county needs to approve it, because by the time you are, quote unquote, put to rest, when your remains are put wherever it is that they are done being, you are no longer your family's property. And wherever you're buried, the cemetery also has to approve it. It is a lengthy and arduous process to dig up a body.
Well, here's the thing. He is on an island. 1, he probably could have done this and no one would have noticed.
That is true.
2, he has asked all immediate family.
Doesn't matter. He still hasn't gotten permission from the cemetery.
The cemetery is owned by Summer Isle.
Maybe.
No, it is. Summer Isle controls everything, so it's technically her island.
We assume.
It's her private property.
Which also doesn't work. You can't just own a cemetery like that. Like, not in the way that this movie is presenting it. I'm aware that there are, like, grandfathered in cemeteries and all that sort of stuff. We're going to assume this one isn't because of how this movie presents itself. But we still need to ask either the county or the state for permission. And we have to have paperwork for all of this.
Summer Isle don't care.
Again, why bother asking then?
No, exactly. Because
just go dig up the child.
Because we have to follow the bones of the original film. We have to be as close to it as we can with being American.
I could have gotten over this hump if he had just gone to, like, and screamed at her in, like, a hysteric way, like, I'm gonna look for myself, and then it cuts to him digging in the night.
No.
That would have made more sense than him asking permission, because this man hasn't asked any other questions for this whole goddamn movie.
Yeah, but, I mean, even then, he's, like, doing it during the day, because, like...
Oh, he asked during the day, and then it cuts to him digging at night.
Yeah.
Why?
Well, no, it's during the daytime here. Give me 1 second.
Is it during the day?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I mistook that for a nighttime scene.
Because the nighttime scene comes right after this.
Oh, okay. Well, I legit thought the man was digging at night. It is during the day.
Yeah.
Boy, it doesn't look it, though, does it?
I know, because this scene specifically, along with the bees, is one of the ones that became the big meme of this movie.
It is, yeah. It is a daytime in the sort of way that people who film nighttimes with too much goddamn ambient light.
It's dusk.
It is dusk-esque, but also it's kind of midday with overcast.
Yeah.
It is ambiguous.
No, I mean, it
is terrible.
It's done, too, because, like, it doesn't work. Like, I know it's supposed to be part of that whole psychological build of,
I agree.
Did they die in the car crash? Did they not? And it's just like, okay, it doesn't matter, because now he's going on to explore the crypt, which also doesn't make sense, because, like,
which also would have needed more paperwork, by the way.
Yeah, because, like, it just doesn't, like, if... so the level of planning that they try to propose in this movie
is absolutely bullshit.
Because they had to wait for him to go dig up the grave and have some little creepy girl crying in the cemetery for him to want to even go into the crypt.
Yeah.
Also, at the same time, like, he gets saved by Willow.
Sure, I don't care anymore.
But, like, if they had been trying to kill, if they're saving him for later, which they are.
Sure, fine. But then why not lock him in the room or something?
Yeah, or why throw him in these situations where if he drowned, well, now your plan's all gone. What are you going to do at this point?
That is true. Which is another reason why, like, when the director says, like, oh, we were trying to have him trapped. Sure, but he's not. He's out here fucking shit up.
Yeah, no, exactly.
But also he's not, like, exploring either. He has to be prompted to go everywhere. And
from 5 minutes of meeting Summer Sister Owl, or Sister Summer Owl, he's now, like, going to confront her again, which he doesn't do a good job. He's just running from room to room, and this is where we see the lumpy old man in the bed, which we can presume is Sister Summer Owl's man and sex toy, which fits the bee motif well enough.
Close enough, but again, like, they have been so lax on the bees.
Exactly. And just, he obviously didn't search his house well enough.
No.
Sister Summer Owl was just chilling in a bed upstairs.
Oh, he hasn't looked at anything.
No.
Because on top of all of this, he has been at multiple points throughout this movie so far, been pointed to different places to be like, there's a clue in there, and a clue in there, and a clue in there, and he has to have his hand held and dragged into those places to be like, look at the schoolroom!
This scene is the most investigation this man has done.
And he
this
does
entire movie.
And he does it at full fucking speed.
Yeah.
The fastest man.
Which, he quickly leaves the house and he runs into Rose on the road, which... this whole part's dumb just because she's like, oh, well, I'm on to the festival. And he's like, step away from the bike. And boy, that sounds very much like put the bunny down. Yeah.
Again, though, knowing that Nic Cage was trying to portray throughout this whole thing a decline into madness, you can see the little pieces where it, like, comes together. But because the writing and dialogue is so bad, it feels so abrupt that he has now snapped and is pointing guns at supposedly innocent people.
Oh, yeah. No, he's absolutely lost it because he goes to the inn expecting the men to help him. Like, you just saw that they didn't talk to you when you loaded, they'll help them with the logs.
Again, would have made more sense if the men were, like, happy being like, dude, we don't do anything all day because this is a bee population. We, like, you know, gather some food occasionally and, like, get to fuck to our heart's content. Like, that would have made so much more sense.
We clean our house. If it gets too hot, we ejaculate to death.
Yeah, like, you know, you flap our wings real fast. Like, we're having a great time here. Get out.
For those who don't know, bees will ejaculate to death if it's too hot.
Yeah, but they also have their own little air conditioning systems.
Yeah.
They're so cute.
But also, like, it's such dumb shit, too, because he's like, I'm going to search every inch of this town. It's like...
And he doesn't. He doesn't search a single inch of this town.
There's not, like, you need a concentration of buildings, and he goes to, like, 2.
Barely.
And that's his search. Like, and this is the part where we have the little girl falling out of the closet, which nod to the original, whatever.
Again, I would have appreciated more play on, like, the youth of the children and their role in this town, but as far as I can tell, they're just little assholes running around.
Well, and on top of that, like, we get this, like, big dramatic scene that the bike's gone missing, and it's trying to be...
But is it dramatic, though? Like, she said she was leaving.
No, because he left the bike to the side.
Yeah, and then she, like, walked back up and was like, mine.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Bitch.
Like someone...
Like, he's confused. Everyone else isn't.
Yeah, no, he just doesn't do shit at all. He's just, again, it feels like, again, they try and orchestrate it, but it doesn't work.
No, it doesn't.
And then he finds, like, the plane sunk and they kill the one dude who's, like, their mainland contact. Like,
Which makes no sense again.
No, exactly. You're gonna let that dude go. Like...
And, like, it's not even, like, a punishment for him bringing stuff. Like, bringing this guy onto their island. Because, like, they don't make a big deal about it. They don't even, like, let on, like, oh, we know what he did. He's gonna get in trouble. They don't say anything. No,
exactly. And just, like, if anyone on the mainland knows that this dude is the only contact to your island, where are they going to go first? And even then, like, the plane's not sunk. One of the wings is just sticking out.
The other thing that doesn't work is, like, it is not like how in the original where they are a self-contained island that occasionally sells their apples and stuff for the few things they can't produce themselves. Mm-hmm. It is assumed and kind of like told to us that this island's entire purpose is to make honey and honey-based products to sell to the mainland.
Yeah.
To buy all of their own shit. Because we don't see any communal gardens, we don't have any orchards or any like real production of food happening.
We know they do their own logging.
Sure, but again, that's not like making food for these people. Like, it's at best they're building their own homes.
Could be mushroom logs.
I mean, they're not living off of mushrooms for the whole year.
And we know they're not hunting. We don't even see any wildlife.
No, again, and like, okay, and that's the other thing. This island is proposed to the viewer multiple times that this is a super small island. In fact, we fly and see it. It's a teeny tiny little island.
Yeah.
And yet, we are about to jump to this island being so large he gets lost in the woods. Essentially in the backyard of my home.
Yeah. No, he doesn't even get lost is the thing. Like, he somehow magically knows exactly where he's going every time in this movie.
Which, I mean, if it was truly portrayed as like a really small island, sure. But the way it is filmed is just so misleading.
No, exactly. And, I mean, they try so hard to tie back to the original because we got the little, the people who pop their heads above the shrub wearing masks that are supposed to be a motif to pagan and Celtic animals, but they're like, we decided not to settle on one specific style because, you know what? There's a lot of other religions that use animals, or just the animals are kind of universal.
Which would have been fine if animals was the theme. But remember, they're not.
No.
Bees are the theme.
Yeah.
So what the hell is this?
Give them all bee masks.
Or like, flowers. Like, big old flower crowns, big old flower capes, just flowers out the fucking wazoo.
Well, that wouldn't work because, like, you need a mask.
You do need a mask, but, like, you could make a flower mask and it'd be terrifying.
I'd rather have bee masks. Can you imagine how...
Bee masks would be terrifying.
Flowers are nice and pretty. Bee masks. Like, everyone around you wearing bee masks just poking you with toothpicks.
Or even just, like, a honeycombed-esque styled mask.
Yeah.
Where it's like a mask, but with, like, honey and honeycomb put on it to bring out the idea of bees. No, instead it's like, woo, a sheep.
Yeah, there's just no religion at all, which he immediately from here goes to the inn, where he punches the innkeeper.
Yeah, he does. He just straight up punches the man.
Which I know is a tie to the original, so that way he can get the costume.
But it doesn't work, because in this one, like, the dynamic is different.
No, and we get the stupid cutting between this and the procession beginning, which I absolutely hate. The Braveheart face paint. It's so
bad.
Dumb.
It's so bad, because once again, this movie claims to have done some, research on Celtic and ancient religions, and yet clearly, they haven't done any research, because we know what this face paint's about. We talked about it in Braveheart extensively.
Yeah. And we also get him attacked by the substitute landlord's daughter, which...
Good. Honestly, she does something.
But it doesn't work, especially with what we saw earlier on. We've had 2 interactions with her where he bumps into her and she's like, oh, but take me with you if you leave, please.
Yeah.
It just doesn't tie into anything else they do. And also her passing out is really bad.
It is very bad. The other thing that doesn't work is on multiple times, it is mentioned in the commentary and some of the interviews that, like, oh, the intention was for all of the people to be purposefully, like, really leading him astray. The acting, though, or the writing, I'm not sure which, something doesn't portray that well enough.
No.
Because that is she is one of my biggest complaints. She could have very well been, like, the just in case he decides to bolt backup plan.
Yeah.
But they don't portray her as weird and creepy. They just portray her as maybe, like, wanting to leave.
Yeah. The way you could have done that, get rid of Willow.
Yeah.
That's all you have to do.
That would have been better.
Get rid of Willow, which, I mean, is the only reason he's on the island to begin with, but...
Or at least, like, give Willow, like, some more personality, be like, don't, like, fully, like, reject his advances.
Yeah.
And then he turns to this other woman that he meets.
Yeah.
Like,
no.
There's so much more that could have been done here.
Exactly. And, I mean, the whole thing just feels like, let's play at being pagan than an actual religion, I think is the main issue.
Yeah, and it's also, at least it is done in a more creative version of the pagan idea, which, because we've seen some that are just straight up, like, made on full, like, the most bullshit of bullshit. Yeah. This one is bullshit, but it is at least so much bullshit and so bad bullshit that it doesn't work no matter how you look at it, which I kind of like. That feels less of an insult to me than if they had picked a specific religion and then butchered it. This at least is vague enough to be anything.
Well, and that's the thing. I think we're trying to file like a tie, even if it's butchering it. We at least know the source instead of Incans, Egyptians, and other religions.
I would love to know what that other is.
Yeah, no, exactly. But, oh no, Rowan is hostage. The girl he's been trying to find this whole time. I do love this part, though. Mm-hmm. Well, second movie we've had with a man in a bear costume.
That's true.
He just straight up punches the one lady who's like,
I do like that.
Not even like trying to pull Rowan back or confront him. He just sucker punches her out of nowhere.
But also, it's like a 4-second walk-up scene. Yeah. She watches him stomp his way up the hill and then wheel back and then punch her.
Yeah. Well, and on top of that, like, what is his plan here? Is like
he doesn't have one.
I mean, I know he doesn't have a plan. But if he did have a plan, he goes and saves her. What's he gonna do? Fight off the entire island? Hide for a night or two? Like...
Oh, no. And, like, again, if this had been played up into his character traits and, like, in who he is as a person, I could have gotten with it. But it's not. It's just like a bad writing habit.
No, exactly. It just doesn't work because immediately, like, he's had her for, like, 30 seconds, but, oh no, he's tricked, and it's... He thinks a one single 6-shooter is gonna deter an entire village. Yeah. But, oh no, it's empty, like this movie.
Seriously, though. Yeah. And I do love that they held on to the bullets long enough for that reveal scene. Beautiful.
Yeah, I had one friend who bitched about this, who was an avid gun dude, who's like,
the fact that he didn't notice, exactly. and is a cop, yeah.
Yeah, no, exactly.
This man's gun practice is terrible.
Bullets aren't light.
No. They're not. And also, like, this is supposed to be a man who has been very well trained on gun safety and gun protocol. Mm-hmm. And he has had this gun for how long without bullets in it? And didn't notice until now?
Basically, probably this whole movie.
He hasn't bothered to look or check.
Because let's remember, we forgot to bring up the part that they steal his self-help tapes, too.
Oh, yeah. And again...
Like, those were helping him at all.
And, like, occasionally the movie throws in, like, scenes of him popping some pills, but those don't seem to be doing anything.
Yeah.
It would have been better if they had, like, stolen... all of it.
Yeah. Which also at the same time, like, they started trying to double back and explain was like, we needed a stranger, but they had to be connected to the village.
Which makes no goddamn sense. Explain that to me.
Yeah. And on top of that, like, we planned this. It's like,
what part did you plan?
What was your contingency plan if he didn't show?
Yeah, and also, like, this is the loosest plan ever because in the beginning, we're not convinced that these people are really tied to this island all that well.
No.
It's just like a very loose thread, and he goes on it because he's crazy.
No, exactly. And on top of that, like, when they go to kill him and they're like, prepare the drone, all of a sudden now religious matters, they're like, you will be a martyr. And it's like,
But,
We've had nothing up till this point.
there's been so little that the few parts that we are given make no sense.
Yeah, because now it's time for torture and the bees! Not the bees!
I will say that I would argue that the only smart part for the cult so far has been that they break his knees immediately.
Yeah.
You can't run away now, bitch.
On top of that, they know he's allergic to bees, so like they're dumping bees on him, knowing this shit's gonna kill him before they even get it to him.
Here's the other part that makes the scene both memeable and also honestly ruins the bee problem for the movie.
Yeah.
Not only have the bees been very, very, very lightly done, despite being supposedly a major plot point of this film, these are all CGI bees.
Yeah.
Which could be fine, but we've seen real bees on a person in the same movie, and those looked dope.
Yeah.
And now we have these bees, which are very clearly not those bees.
Yeah.
And if there had been no real bees in this movie, those bees could have been fine, and I would have been okay with them. But I saw real bees already, and they don't look anything like this.
Yeah.
Part of the problem is Nicolas Cage, which I totally understand, did not want real bees dumped on his head.
Yeah.
That is a fair statement. As an actor, I do not blame him.
And as a production company, I know is a high insurance claim.
That would be terrible to insure.
Well, because I recently learned, like, part of the reason they don't like actors doing stunts and why Tom Cruise doing his own stunts is actually pretty impressive is because insurance companies won't let you do it.
Yeah, no. That's so much money.
Yeah, like Robert Downey Jr. sprained his ankle or his wrist or something, and they had to halt, like, months of production, which is money in their pocket.
And heaven forbid you have productions back to back. Like, we already talked about how Christopher Lee hurt his back and had to miss out, and they changed a whole movie for the worse because of it. And he wasn't even originally filming that one. He was filming a different movie.
Exactly.
So, I am not mad that Nicolas Cage didn't, bite the bullet and have real bees poured on him. I'm not mad about that.
Okay.
The thing that I am mad about is there was clearly no conversation with Nicolas Cage and whoever was going to be CGIing the bees to talk about what the bees would look like, how they would be crawling, what parts of his face they would be working with, because he has to verbally yell to the people, "They're in my eyes, my eyes!" Like, I can see.
Yeah.
We're like 4 feet from you. I can see the bees on your eyes. Don't tell me that, because it just feels like you're telling the CGI man where the bees are.
No, it's great. I mean, this is my favorite scene of the whole movie.
Oh,
I'm not gonna
for sure,
lie.
it's the best scene of the whole movie.
This and the bear punch.
Yes, the bear punch is also delightful. The other reason why this doesn't work is, and I don't necessarily think that this is the hardest problem with the whole movie, but it is a very memorable scene. The bees do not act like bees here.
They act like liquid.
They do act like liquid, which, granted, I have seen people pour bees into things. That's, like, really cool. I'm impressed that bees, like, cling together into, like, a lump and you can pour them in things. That's fine. But, like, he open-mouth screams the whole time.
Yeah.
And then, my favorite part, which I have questions about this quote-unquote ancient magic healing remedy that they use to bring him back. He is supposedly very allergic, like deathly allergic to bees. And on top of that, even if you are not deathly allergic to bees, the swelling that bees can cause, rephrase, will cause when they sting you. This man does not look like he has been stung.
No, not at all.
They don't swell his eyes shut. They don't give him red lumps. Nothing. It is just Nic Cage looking slightly uncomfortable.
Yeah. One thing I do want to mention is that if you watch the theatrical cut, the audio of the torture is only played over, like, the procession that leads up to the Wicker Man.
Yeah.
You have to watch the uncut version to get the bees and the whole torture, breaking of the legs.
Which I understand why him yelling, "They're in my eyes," works for the procession scene.
Yeah.
We could have very easily had 2 takes, one where he says "in my eyes" and one where he's just screaming.
No.
And they could have been 2 different things.
Nah, they probably shot the one and then, like, the movie rating organization's like, nah, you gotta cut that bit. So they're like, alright, we'll keep the audio, but we'll cut the actual scene.
That is probably what happened. However, I do question, like, this movie's not that gory.
No.
Nor does it have any, like, real tit scenes. There's no sex scenes to really, like, ramp it up. This movie is, however, advertised as a horror movie, and yet it seems real light in the horror element.
Because PG-13.
I don't like that.
No.
I think this movie should have just stayed in its lane. Show the bees.
Show me some titties.
Like,
Show me bee titties.
Honestly, bee titties would have made this movie better.
Yeah.
Would have made this so much better.
Oh, yeah. But in American fashion, it's time for the Wicker Man, where we have to make it 30 feet larger than the original.
It is a little awkward, because, like, the original one feels very doable.
Yeah.
Like, it feels like something a small town could have put on and, like, created and, like, also manhandled a man into.
Mm-hmm.
This one doesn't. This one feels very, like...
Yeah.
It feels too much.
Yeah, no, exactly. Well, and on top of that, the part of the scene that's really dumb, too, is Edward is like, Rowan, don't listen to them. Listen to me. It's like, why would she? She's known you...
barely spoken to this child.
She's known you, like, as far as we know, like 5 minutes.
And she's lived in this village her whole life. But again, we don't really understand the religion because they won't tell us.
Yeah.
But, like, yeah, I do appreciate that the child is meant to be the spooky one, the bringer of death.
Mm-hmm.
But we had masks on earlier. I feel like we could have, like, kept the masks on. We have several characters pulling masks off to, like, reveal that it's actually them. I know it's them. Who else would it be?
Yeah. Well, even, like, Willow was, like, having remorse over her supposed feelings, which it doesn't work. It just feels fake.
Yeah, because her feelings up until this point have been fake.
Yeah. And on top of that, like, their whole chanting, the drone must die, like... It doesn't work. It hasn't been built up at all.
Again, and part of that problem is because they have not explained their religious system. They have only told us bees. And bees do not just murder, sacrifice people unless there's a problem in the hive.
Yeah.
But they don't explain that.
No, it's just...
And I guarantee you that the average person watching doesn't have all this fucking bee knowledge that I have.
No, it's so dumb. And, like, the movie just ends. Like, there's nothing...
It does. There's nothing else.
No.
It's just immediately credits.
Yeah. There's no, like, dancing in front of it. There's no, like... doesn't even end in, like, some stupid American fashion.
Or even, like, a flyby of the island during spring. Or collecting honey. Or, like, a plane flying. Or, like, nothing. It just cut to black.
Yeah.
It's so bad.
Yeah, so, The Wicker Man.
The worst movie.
It's better than The Wicker Tree.
Okay, it is, but only because of the memes.
Yeah, no, exactly. And as we mentioned earlier, this movie did not do well at all, financially or commercially, or from even, like, a fan base.
No, it really didn't. And it should be known that in the very early days of having this written, Christopher Lee was approached and asked if he would like to have a role in it or even a cameo. And Christopher Lee was quoted as saying, "I don't believe in remakes. I believe there should only be follow-up films."
Yeah. No,
and I think he was right.
Except for the Wicker Tree.
Yeah.
But at least it tried something different.
I do think, though, that, like, that is a follow-up film. It is not a remake.
No.
At least, like, when it was presented to him, it was a follow-up film.
Exactly. Well, and I also think, at least in, like, 2006, if you weren't a movie person or really into this genre in general,
sure,
is that for a new audience, you might even not know that the original Wicker Man existed.
Most of us didn't. Yeah, this was our only introduction to it.
Exactly. And so, like, I can kind of understand remaking it, like, 30 years later.
Sure.
And seeing how a new crowd likes it. But...
but it needs to have like more of a new twist.
Yeah, and the people coming back to it who knew the original, I can see why they wouldn't have liked this. And I even because the special edition we have of the Wicker Man, Christopher Lee even brings up he's confused of why they're even remaking it in the U.S. Not that he doesn't bring up that remakes shouldn't be made. He's confused why it's even in a U.S. setting.
And part of the confusion is, from when the original came out to when the remake happened, it's not like there was a big fan following. There wasn't, like, a resurgence in folk-style horror. This was very much an out-of-the-blue movie for the mainstream audience. Like, granted, folk horror by this point was a genre, and it was something you could watch, but it was not, like, mainstream. This movie was meant to be mainstream. Nic Cage was a well-known actor by this point, and people... despite a lot of us thinking that he was a goofy actor, we did watch his stuff. Like, that was part of the fun.
Well, and I think part of what makes it bad, too, is that LaBute mentioned that Cage tried, or, like, changed the movie multiple times while making it. So
I can see where that happened, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm trying to find up because right before this, like, Nic Cage had been in the World Trade Center, The Ant Bully, The Weatherman, Lord of War, National Treasure, Matchstick Man. These are all the movies leading up to The Wicker Man. And then after this, he did Ghost Rider. But
yeah, I mean, but honestly, I would argue Ghost Rider's better than this.
Yeah.
At least it follows some source material better.
Yeah, this kind of feels like it's the tail end, because, like, a little bit before we had The Rock, Con Air, Face Off, Snake Eyes, 8mm. This kind of, like, just feels like the beginning of the end of people kind of taking him as a big name.
Yeah, this was definitely during a portion of Cage's career where, for the most part, most of us only knew him as a goofy actor.
Yeah.
Some of our parents would recognize his name as like, oh, yeah, when he was younger, I liked his work. But, by this point, they've all seen his more recent stuff.
Yeah.
And granted, like, when you, like, look at his works as an entirety and know the whole story behind all of it, there is appreciation to be had there. However, knowing how much influence he had over this movie, in the writing and the directing, in starring in it, in the production of it, it is disappointing because we know he is capable of creating some really cool stuff. We know he has that power.
Yeah, no, exactly. We talked about multiple movies where he tries doing something a little bit different, like Vampire's Kiss. He keeps trying to do, like, a little bit more of, like, the old Dracula kind of movies and stuff, and it works different. Or no, like, oh god, he brings up some old German movie with dude who plays a goon, but like,
and like, yes, it is goofy and over the top, but when you listen to him explain it and talk about it, you're like, okay, I can see where you were trying to go. I just don't think that it read that way to the audience because they don't have that movie knowledge. Yeah. This one, even he himself has no backing. Like, he multiple times talks about how, like, he took on the movie, but, like, he didn't really have time to think about how he was going to modernize it. It very much felt like he was doing a lot of this on the fly as far as, like, what parts to incorporate and keep. He regularly talked about, like, oh, yeah, this is definitely one of the ones that if I had done it different, we would have really done it different.
Yeah, no, and I think it's something different, like, because normally he seems to have, like, the actor-director relationship, whereas now he's actor / kind of paying for this movie as well.
Yeah.
And I mean, he even thought the movie was absurd. And even if we take the original film out of context,
sure,
this movie doesn't work as a standalone either.
It really doesn't. And that's part of the disappointment. And I can understand the frustration of this movie because the elements behind it, even if you don't watch the original, because I agree, I do think that some of these older horror movies, a remake is needed because a lot of people don't have the lexicon like we do to go back and watch these. Honestly, like, the old Wicker Man is honestly a more recent horror that we talk about.
Perfect example, The Haunting on Hill House, the phenomenal TV show that we had that I've only seen 2 episodes of, but everyone loved. If you go back and watch the original Vincent Price one, it's good, but it's goofy. Or like, probably an even better example, but older example, the original Vincent Price The Fly and the David Cronenberg Fly, where he took the same idea and updated it.
Yes, giving people a platform to watch it, enjoy it, and then know that there is something older that if they want to, they can go back and enjoy, I think is a huge part of, especially with horror, because it is such an old and dense genre, to, like, keep it going, to continue. Like, if you're going to not make something new, at least make something that is a jumping off point for a lot of people. Wicker Man was so bad that most people did not bother to learn about the original one until the, like, revive of the franchise, or, like, of the style of folk horror much later down the road.
No, exactly. So, I guess, Chris, on our good, bad, weird scale, what do you give the remake of Wicker Man?
This is bad for me. I can see how some people will enjoy parts of it. I have used the memes from this countless times. They are all over all of my texts and Teams messages. However, even when I first watched this, even in my I've rewatched this multiple years because it's easily accessible, not because it's good. Like, at no point have I wanted to watch this. It just shows up and I'm like, oh my god, have you seen this?
Yeah, well, and I think it does come up of have you seen this, because as much as I want to give it good, bad, there's just so much of this movie as a standalone movie
Mm-hmm.
that's just so baffling and inconsistent that I think I do have to give it a solid bad rating as well. But that's the thing is like, it's one of those movies where it's so bad that you have to make people watch the train wreck of it.
I agree. And I also think that if you are looking at this like how we do for Nic Cage November, in the context of Nicolas Cage's career and his entire, library of films that he has worked on, this is an interesting one to look at because while he has done many bad films, most of those are bad for other reasons.
Mm-hmm.
This one is bad, and a lot of that sits on Nic Cage's shoulders and just his alone. And not even because he's experimenting, not even because he's trying something to, like, bring back some dead art style that the man is the only one who remembers because, it came out in 1827 Germany or some bullshit like that. Like, this doesn't pull from any of that. There isn't any greater context to this. This is just bad because it was bad from the get-go. Like, every portion of it was poorly done.
No, exactly. I mean, there's just... It's just not thought through, and the elements just don't add up to... There's interesting elements, I will give it that.
There are.
But they just don't add up to even, like, an inkling of something potentially good.
And I know we have given the good bad to worse movies.
Yeah.
But part of that has always been looking at the budget and who has been involved. And this movie had $40 million as the budget. It didn't even make back all of that money. And knowing that this is during everyone who worked on this was well into their career, they were well-known, well-respected actors, actresses, writers, directors, and prop producers.
Mm-hmm.
And it still was garbage. With $40 million as the budget.
Yeah.
Is one of the most disappointing things for there not to be any story behind it, no drama behind it, no reasoning for it to be bad other than it is just bad.
Yeah. So, do you recommend this movie?
It depends.
Okay.
I think that if you are like us and you are going on a Nic Cage journey and you need a break from either the denseness of his more recent stuff that does need some more depth into his directing style or his art style, or you are doing his early works and you need a good giggle because his earlier works were a lot more serious.
Yeah.
This is a good break. You don't have to think about it. You can just melt your mind and let it be rot.
Yeah.
However, if you are a folk horror person, I would skip this one. It barely fits in the vibe. It barely is a horror movie to begin with. And I mean, it is barely a horror movie. It doesn't add anything to the genre. I don't think it's necessary. There's others that are better.
Yeah, I think I have to agree with you on that. It is one of those ones where I'd be hesitant to really recommend it to anyone not looking for a dumb fun time.
Yeah.
Or not even dumb fun time, just a dumb baffling time.
It is. If you regularly use the memes, then it is a fun time, but only because of the memes.
Yeah.
If you don't know what memes we're talking about, don't bother watching this film.
No.
It won't be entertaining.
Exactly. And so, because we do have a different scale for this month as well.
Oh, yes.
What level of Cage do you give this movie?
Okay, so to help define this year's Cage scale, because I don't want it to just be how unhinged is Cage.
Yeah.
I would like to set my scale, at least for this year, for the Cage November, to be 1 being the least thought through and most distinct movie, to 5 being a very distinct Cage style with also talent, effort, and research done into his role.
Mm-hmm.
This is a 1. There's barely any research done. He barely is Cage in it. There's only a handful of scenes where he really rages, and even those aren't all that cagey. And the 2 that we have are the memes that we text each other, and they're 4 seconds long.
Yeah, I gotta give this a sub-mid Cage, because, it's not good, it's not halfway decent, but I also haven't, there's many, many other Cage movies I've seen that are worse than this one.
I will agree, there are worse Cage movies, but I feel that there is more Cage passion, which is why I am giving it the lowest score I can. It is the least cagey movie for me.
I don't think there's even Cage passion to it either.
There isn't even Cage passion,
No.
which is honestly what we're watching for.
Yeah, no, I'm just, yeah.
It is a very disappointing Cage film. However, it is somehow one of the best-known Cage films.
because I think it's more publicly known. And
it's very readily accessible.
It's one of those horror films that I would put in a camp of horror for non-horror fans.
I would agree with you. If we had to pick something that was horror related for people whom we know can't do gore, can't do spooks, can't do jump scares, anything like that,
yeah,
this does work. But again, if you like any form of horror, this is going to be disappointing.
Oh yeah. So, finally, it's the 3 Degrees of Takashi Miike. For those unaware, in our 5th year of the Good, the Bad, and the Weird podcast, we have decided to start a game. Here are the rules. 3 degrees to get to Takashi Miike. It has to be a movie connection. Can't use the same connection, i.e. movie actor, writer, and director twice. As well, we'll try to make the plot and themes tie if applicable. If I win, which, surprise, surprise, the tally's already there.
I figured.
I get a full month of Takashi Miike next year, so look forward to that. This time around, I went with Nic Cage, who was in one of the previews of Grindhouse, which I think was Werewolves of the SS.
That sounds correct.
Werewolf Women of the SS, which is also a nod itself to Isla She-Wolf of the SS, which is a Nazi exploitation movie.
The man's been some crazy stuff.
Which was with Quentin Tarantino, who was in a movie we've done in the past. Sukiyaki Western Django, directed by Takashi Miike, a movie about a goofy cast of characters and a man in search of a treasure that ends up being a special child.
You know what? You did it.
I did.
I wasn't terribly worried with Cage being the starting point there, but good on you for doing some bigger names.
Yes. So, but yeah. Anywho, this has been the first episode of Nic Cage November for the Good, the Bad, and the Weird podcast.
Thanks for listening.
Peace. Thank you for stopping by this here town of the Good, the Bad, and the Weird. We appreciate your listenership, and if you want more of our takes in your life, feel free to check us out on social media at The Good, the Bad, and the Weird podcast, or TGTBTW for short. As well, if we missed a fact, your favorite part of a movie, or just have a suggestion and want to reach out and say howdy, feel free to email us at tgtbtwpodcast@gmail.com. And feel free to join our Discord at The Good, the Bad, and the Weird podcast, where we talk about movies, just share random banter here and there. And always check out our podcasters, streamers, or any other content creator we shout out in our episodes. We really appreciate it. And as always, thank you for listening. Peace.